In lesson 310, we're going to work with decimals. We're going to be using base 10 blocks to talk about tenths and hundredths. You will need your math journal and a whiteboard marker, and eraser for a quick warm-up. On your whiteboard, go ahead and number 1, 2, and 3. You're going to use the symbol either greater than, less than, or equal to. Do not write down the problem, only go ahead and write down the symbol. Go ahead and pause your video and answer, is it greater than, less than, or equal to? Number 1, 42,997 is greater than 42,097. And the first place they differ in place value is in the hundreds. Number 2, 50,478 is less than 51,396. We can tell by looking at the thousands place. Number 3, 76,848 is greater than 76,488. First place they are different is in the hundreds place. Go ahead and erase your whiteboard. You're going to number 1 to 6. Go ahead and number 1 to 6 on your whiteboard. You're going to enter the following numbers with digits. So for example, number 1, you're going to write down 14 hundredths. Just as a reminder, this is our ones place, this is the tenths, and this is the hundredths. Notice that when we're working with the place values after the decimals, they both end in TH. Go ahead and complete numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Pause the video at this time. Number 2, 4 hundredths. Well, the 4 has to end in the hundredths place. So in order to make sure that it ends in the hundredths place, I have to put a 0 here, and there are no ones. For 4 tenths, the 4 has to end in the tenths place. So the 4 would have to end here. So this is what 4 tenths would look like. Now be careful, don't let them trick you on this one. The next one is just the number 400. How do you just write the number 400? No decimal needed. 40 hundredths, the 40 needs to end in the hundredths. So 40 hundredths, it ends in the hundredths place, is written like this. And again, they're trying to trick you with number 6. How do you write the number 40? Just 40. Go ahead and erase your whiteboard. And we're going to go ahead and look at this question, not in your math journal quite yet. It says, how can you use base 10 blocks to show that 4 tenths is not equal to, that's what that symbol means, does not equal 4 hundredths. So if I remember that this place is the tenths, and this place value is the hundredths, this number right here, the very first one, is this, and the next one is this. So if I were to go ahead and use base 10 blocks, 4 tenths would be 4 longs. 4 hundredths would be 4 cubes. So how do you use fractions then to show that 4 tenths is more than or greater than 4 hundredths? Well, 4 tenths is greater than 4 hundredths. So place value is very important when placing a number. All right, how about this one? 14 hundredths is less than 4 tenths. Again, this is the ones place, the whole number 1, tenths. and hundredths. So 14 hundredths would look like this. Erase that and write that a little bit better. Would look like this. 4 tenths would look like this. How would that look as base 10 blocks? This would be 1 long, because the tenths are the longs, and the hundreds are the cubes. So as base 10 blocks, this one looks like this, and this one is 4 longs. How could I use fractions to show the same thing? So on your whiteboard, would you show with fractions that 14 hundredths is less than 4 tenths? Go ahead and write that on your whiteboard. 14 hundredths is less than 4 tenths. All right, we're going to go ahead and work in our math journal. We are on journal page 93. If we were in person, I would have you sit next to a partner with a whole bunch of longs and cubes, our base 10 blocks, lying in a big pile. And what I'd ask you to do is take a handful, don't count it out, and put it on your partner's desk. Then I would ask your partner to go ahead and figure out what the decimal would be for all of the combined base 10 blocks, the longs and the cubes. So because we're not in person, I have taken the handful for you, and I've placed them off to the right. On journal page 93, we're going to do 2 problems together, and then for your assignment today, I'm going to actually have you complete the rest of it, take a picture of it, and upload it to Schoology. Just a reminder that the longs are equal to tenths, and the cubes would equal hundredths. And that's because it would take 100 of them to cover one big flat, a flat 10 by 10 grid. So let's start, I'm going to actually start in column B. I'm going to count how many tenths there are, how many longs. 1, 2, 3. I have 3 tenths. And how many hundredths or how many cubes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So altogether, I have, in other words, if I were to take this grid right here, these would cover 36 of those 100 little squares. So go ahead and write that on page 93. Let's do another one together on page 93. You don't have base 10 blocks, but I've provided an example off to the right. So again, remember, these are longs. In other words, we call them tenths. And the cubes represent hundredths. Okay, so I'm going to start with B. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths. Write this in. Then I'll count. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 hundredths. If I add them all up together, I would get 64 hundredths. In other words, in this flat, I would be able to cover 60. Each one of these represents 10. 64 out of the 100. So go ahead and fill it out in column A, 64 hundredths. And as a fraction, 64 out of the 100 would be covered. If I were to enlarge this a little bit, you would be able to put those on top. All right. One last one together, and then you're going to do the rest on your own. So I have the cubes, which represent hundredths, because because it takes 100 of those to cover a grid, 100 grid. I would be able to cover, take one of those cubes, 3, 4 of those, it would cover 4 hundredths. So I don't have any longs. Oh, let me write that in the right spot. You should be on number 3 right now. There's 0 longs. Remember, the longs equal tenths. But I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hundredths. So I put in 0 longs, 5 hundredths. I have 5 hundredths. If I were to cover that, yes, I have 5 there, it'd be 5 out of the 100 needed. Now what you're going to do is you have a number of problems. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 more to do on this sheet. So we've done the first 3 together. You're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more on the page that you have. Then you're going to take a picture of it and upload it to Schoology. Remember that the longs equal tenths, and that is the first place after the decimal. The little cubes equals hundredths. And when we write that as a decimal, that is this place right here. Okay, so go ahead and finish the assignment.